Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jamal. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back to episode 3 of my podcast, Drivin and Survivin. I took a little bit of a week off there, but we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys had an awesome Memorial Day weekend. I, for one, had an interesting Memorial Day weekend for sure. So my cousins and I actually play flag football every holiday, anytime we have a day off work. And actually, on the last play of the game, I dislocated my left shoulder. It literally popped forward out of its socket. So it was an interesting day. We couldn't get it to go back in. So one of my friends drove me to the hospital. And literally as I'm getting out of the car in the hospital parking lot, I did a little shrug like this and it just fell right back into place. And it was almost fine, like instantly. So I wore a sling for 2 days, but that definitely was a crazy experience. I've never had any bone or joint issues before, so dislocated shoulder was pretty wild, and I definitely do not recommend doing that if you guys were thinking about it for any reason. So yeah, definitely had an interesting Memorial Day weekend. It is June. Happy Pride Month to everyone that owns a Ford out there. I want to go ahead and wish you guys a happy Pride Month. And then what else happened recently? Oh, Top Gun came out. We did go see that over Memorial Day weekend as well. What a phenomenal movie. You guys, if you guys have not seen Top Gun, you guys have to go watch it. It's probably one of the better movies that's came out in the past like 3 years, I would say. And especially if you enjoyed the classic, you'll really enjoy the new one. You definitely don't have to have seen the classic to go enjoy the new one, but like there's a lot of callbacks to the original, and the movie was just absolutely phenomenal. And you have to go see it on the biggest screen you can, because it definitely is one you have to see in theaters. What else happened? Another thing that I kind of wanted to let you guys know is I've kind of just been, casually looking at RCSBs, as people like to call them, regular cab, short bed, Silverados and GMC Sierras, like specifically like a 99 to like an 07, like that kind of body style. But people right now are still absolutely on crack when it comes to selling vehicles, and especially those trucks. I've been thinking hard about the next kind of vehicle I want. Obviously I want to get a C6 ZR1. That's like my goal for my next vehicle. But in the meantime, I was thinking about getting like either a truck, or I'm also thinking about a Jeep Gladiator at some point. Obviously the truck would be a lot cheaper because I'd be looking at like one of those 99s to 07s that I want, like a cash truck for around like $5,000. But right now it's still absolutely crazy. It's hard to find like a clean one. It's like a Troceano, if you will, the regular cab short bed Silverado GMC Sierra. So it's really hard to find a clean one because, as you guys can imagine, if you guys have ever looked, there's a lot of them out there that have just been either trashed or people just want way too much money for them. So those are kind of like current events that are going on right now. I'd also like to remind everybody that this is an interactive podcast. As I like to say, we are episode 3. So far, the first 2 episodes have only got around like 100 views, but that's just kind of what I expected, just because this is such a brand new show and not everyone is looking for like an hour length of content to consume. But I really do enjoy podcasts. I really do believe strongly in this podcast, so I definitely want to keep them going as a way to be more consistent. Definitely we'll be making... I've got some videos lined up soon. I've got some parts in the mail for the Corvette coming, and I have a few other ideas that I want to do with that Corvette as well. So those videos are still coming. The Cars and Coffee vlogs will still come, obviously, but these are just kind of podcasts that I like to do because I do enjoy them myself, and I think it's an awesome way for me to hop on here, talk about current events, talk to you guys, get more comfortable in front of the camera, and just create a longer form of content for those of you guys that are maybe at work that like to listen to them in one ear, you guys that are on drives, you guys that are at the gym, you're on a walk, whatever you want to do. Just kind of a way for me to get out here and kind of rant, I guess. So as I like to remind everybody, these podcasts are interactive. Please send in your videos, your audio notes, your voice notes, or your text questions into the email jamals.garage@gmail.com. I'll pop it up again at the top of the screen. jamals.garage@gmail.com. We've only got one submission so far, and I'm going to go over that right now. So this one comes from my boy Ian at Mudget93 on Instagram. Go ahead and give him a follow. He sent in a few questions that he wanted me to answer, so let's go ahead and run through them. Ian and I definitely have a history. We went to college together, so we're very opinionated, and I actually might get him on an episode here in the future because I think it would be hilarious. But his first question comes in, Vokes or Works? So he's referring to wheels, Voke Racing and Work wheels. He's a big JDM guy, and he's a real strong believer in real parts, if you will, expensive wheels, just quality parts overall. So Voke Racing versus Works. I am kind of partial to this question because I have had Voke Racings in the past on my Infiniti G35X, which we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. I had Voke Racing VS Winnings is what they were called. It was a 2-piece wheel. They were 19-inch wheels. Those were kind of my dream wheels for the longest time, and I did actually end up getting them on my G35. And coincidentally enough, CCW Classics were my dream wheels for my C5, and I got those too. So Voke Racing, definitely, they make some of the more iconic wheels, I'd say. The Voke T37s, those are an iconic wheel. A lot of companies have made replicas of those wheels, and those are just kind of a real just JDM icon wheel that looks super clean on almost any vehicle, not just JDM cars. But that definitely is one of my favorite wheel designs ever made. Work also has some classic wheel designs. You've got the Work Meisters or Meisters or whatever. Those, hot take right here, Work Meisters, I think those are just ugly wheels. Ian's probably going to kill me for saying that, but Work Meisters, just not a fan of those. Work VSXXs, though, those were one of my favorite wheels growing up, and I think those are just an awesome, another kind of timeless design. And then Work's got some other cool wheels as well. I can't remember the specific model names off the top of my head, but if I had to pick between Voke Racing and Work wheels, I'd probably go Vokes, just because I had those wheels on my Infiniti, and I think the T37s are an awesome wheel, and I definitely would throw them on like a vehicle that I've got or one that I might have in the future. So the next question he asked, V8 turbo or V10 supercharger? So this one's kind of an interesting question. I've never really experienced V10 superchargers before. V8 turbos, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like an LS turbo would be awesome to have. Also like a V8 twin turbo from the factory. If you're talking like factory application, you could go into like a McLaren 720S or kind of a McLaren platform. They like to use those V8 twin turbos in their vehicles. V10 supercharger, again, don't have much experience with it. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like VF engineering. You'll see a lot of YouTubers, Daily Driven Exotics, Vehicle Virgins. They go through VF engineering to put superchargers on their Huracans. So that's kind of like a V10 supercharger application. But I think if I had to pick between those two, I'd probably go V8 turbo, just because I'd love to have an LS turbo. And V10 supercharger is kind of like a it's more of a unique setup, I would say. You don't see them as often. And I think if I had a V10, I personally would probably want it twin turboed, like a twin turbo Lambo versus a supercharged Lambo. So for this one, I'm going to go V8 turbo. He also asked P1 or 918. So for those of you guys that don't know, kind of the Hyper 3, if you will, that kind of came out around, I think it was like 2016, 2017 now when those three iconic cars came out, the P1, the 918, and the LaFerrari. So those were kind of like the big three that came out, and Ian specifically asking P1 or 918. That one's a difficult one, man. That 918 is so sick. I think it looks so awesome. The P1, also an amazing car. But if I had to pick one of those, just based off my experience from what I know about Porsches and McLarens are a lot more finicky. So if I think I had to have one, even though the P1 is such a sick car, I'd probably go with a 918. I do think the P1 looks better, but I think I would go 918 for that one. Now, Ian, next question he asked, Supra or Skyline? So we're kind of already the 10-minute mark here. I got to kind of hurry up because I got a lot to get into this episode. Supra versus Skyline. And he says any of them. So R32, R33, R34, or Supra, any of the Supras, right? So I think for this one, it'd be real close for me between an R34 GTR and an MK4 Supra. Those two are like probably my two favorite JDM cars ever made. I think if I had to pick between those, that's a hard question. R34 GTRs are definitely worth more right now, but I think a Supra with the 2JZ, probably my more favorite platform out of those two. That would be real difficult. Real difficult if someone had two perfectly built cars, an MK4 Supra or an R34 GTR, and they're like, you can only pick one. Oh, that one would be difficult. I think I would go Supra. Don't hate me, everyone. I think I would go Supra. The next question he asked, roll or dig. This refers to racing, roll racing or dig racing. Right now, I would just probably have to say roll racing just because I don't really have a car set up for dig racing. Obviously, I think dig racing takes more skill, takes a better driver than just roll racing. But right now, I think I would answer that question, roll racing. And then finally, second to last question he asked, which car do you prefer driving, the Corvette or the Cadillac? Now, this is probably one of the most asked questions I get when it comes to my vehicles, just because they're both V8, LS, LT platform, GM cars. Which one do you prefer driving? As many of you guys know, I do daily the Cadillac, but the Corvette is an awesome car to just hop in and drive. That car, to me, is like pretty much perfect to where I want it. There's some small interior things that I probably want to change and just like kind of OEM parts that have worn out that I would like to replace. But the Corvette's pretty much where I want it. I maybe would consider supercharging it in the future, but honestly, it makes great power and it drives awesome and it handles really well. The Cadillac is obviously the daily. For those of you guys that don't know, it's mostly stock right now. Just has some wheels, some appearance mods, and just some LEDs and stuff. So I consider that car pretty much stock right now. Which, interesting enough, guys, the extended warranty did just end in April on the Cadillac. So I could start getting into mods on that car right now, but I think honestly I want to focus on paying it off before I start modding it, just because I don't want to start dumping all this money into the car and then something happens to it, God forbid, and I don't have money to fix it. So having a car that expensive without a warranty is kind of nerve-wracking, but it's a really reliable daily, and in its stock form, it's an awesome car. So which one do I prefer driving? I think that one just depends on the mood I'm in and where I'm going. If I'm just going to be sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic, definitely the Cadillac with its daily awesome amenities, the super quiet cabin. It's got pretty good AC. I say pretty good because the Vet actually does have better air conditioning than it. But it's just automatic transmission and it's very comfortable to ride around in. Obviously, the Corvette, if I had to pick a car, driving at night, no traffic, it's a nice day, roll the windows down, get some music going, the Corvette's definitely the car for that. And if I'm going to a car show, as most of you guys know, I do prefer taking the Corvette over the Cadillac just because I think the Corvette looks cooler right now and there's more done to it, and I think it has more appeal when going to like a car meet or a car show. So it just depends on the situation. And then finally he asked car meets or car shows, and that question actually has to do with the video, the title of this podcast, and it's actually what this episode's going to be about. We're going to talk about today, have car meets been ruined? So this is definitely an interesting question to look at because I haven't been to a good meet in a long time. Obviously, we go to car shows in the morning. Cars and Coffee, South Lake is one of the ones that we always go to. And I try to go to that one at least every other month, if not every month, depending on what my other buddies are doing. But I haven't been to a decent car meet in a long time. Now, there's a few reasons for that. It might just be because the car meets I remember going to, I was in high school, and a lot of the things at the time may have been what kids are doing nowadays at car meets, but to me, I may have just gotten older and I just don't enjoy car meets as much just because of all the drama and stuff that's involved with them. So, lately, I've been kind of a car show guy, but I definitely do miss a quality car meet, at least in my area, because this is kind of something I want to talk about. Another reason that, car meets to me may have been ruined is because of the prevalence of social media now, right? So when we were going to car meets, it was back when we were in high school, 2012 to 2013. Obviously, social media was around. Obviously, Facebook was around. Obviously, Instagram was around. Snapchat, all that stuff was around, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And I think a lot of kids nowadays I I hate the term, but chasing clout. So it's like they want to do stuff at car meets that ends up going viral on TikTok or on Instagram or on YouTube or whatever. And a lot of the car meets I go to nowadays are just broken up before they're really even getting started, and there just really isn't a quality meet around anymore. Car shows, definitely there are a few still around, but like a quality car meet, I don't know, man. So that's kind of what I wanted to dive in today on this episode. So I've got my list of things here that I want to talk about again. I try to make this list just to kind of keep me on topic here. We're already at the 15-minute mark, so we're making good time here, guys. I want to talk about car meets on this episode because they're a big part of any car guy's life. I think if you look at the progression of a car guy, car meets definitely plays a crucial role in kind of the growth of a car guy, if you will, right? Because you kind of get your first car, you start to do a little bit of modifications, and then you're like, hey, I want to kind of show these modifications off, or I want to speak to people in person about speak to people that might also have this car and may have also done these mods. And car meets are a great place for people to kind of meet up and talk about these things and check out each other's rides. So they were definitely a huge part of my life. Just kind of going into the history of car meets and car shows for me. My first car show experience, I think I remember, this was at a local Sonic by my house. This was definitely when I was probably in elementary school. I remember going to the Sonic up by my house, and there was a bunch of classic cars kind of parked in the stalls. If you guys don't know what Sonic is, it's kind of a restaurant that we have. I think it's in the South and the Midwest. I don't know exactly where all their locations are kind of based, but it's called Sonic Drive-Thru, and it's kind of like an old school style fast food restaurant, if you will. You kind of pull up in these stalls, you hit the button, you order, and then people kind of bring the food out to you, and you kind of eat in your car. It's like a drive-through kind of thing, right? And so I remember the Sonic by my house would have these monthly car shows, actually, and a bunch of classic cars would pull up. So that was kind of my first experience, right? It was just a bunch of old dudes in classic cars. I really had no idea what the cars were. They were kind of too old for me to even kind of know what they were. And even now, like, if I saw a bunch of those cars, like, I'm not real in tune with all the classic cars and stuff like that. Obviously, I know the big ones, but like, that was kind of my car show experience. And then I talked about this in one of the other episodes. They used to have these classic car shows in the summers at my high school. Again, but those were like classic car shows. So I'd go there, I'd see a bunch of classic cars. It didn't really interest me that much. I was really more so looking for like the Lamborghinis or the Ferraris or the GTRs or like cars like that, like more modern stuff that like I had kind of seen in video games or seen in movies or whatever. Those were kind of the things that attracted me more than kind of those classic cars. So I do remember those car shows, and I would always, as I mentioned before, would always tell my mom anytime I like saw them or caught them, because I'd never really like know when they were scheduled for. It was kind of all word of mouth back then when I was in elementary school, and there was no like social media or like online events to kind of tell you about these things. So if we were driving by, I'd see something going on, I'd be like, hey mom, pull over real quick, I want to go check it out. And she'd pull over, and I'd go check the stuff out, and that was kind of my first experience, right? And so we fast forward to when I finally started driving, right? I got my Infiniti G35, 2005 Infiniti G35. This is when I was 17 years old. I believe it was like 2012 when this happened. And I started to modify it, right? Like my buddy played a huge influence in me getting into cars, my buddy Casey, and he was like, yo, like, you can modify your car to get more power out of it. You can change the way it looks. You can just add parts here and there. And that's kind of how I started getting into modifying cars. As I mentioned, my first modification was a cold air intake. I paid $250 for it. And funny story about that. When we installed it, I installed it at my buddy's house because I didn't want to install it at my house because my parents didn't know that I was spending so much money on my car parts. And I always kind of told them, like, if I spent $250 on something, I'd be like, oh, like this is only like $40, just so that they wouldn't get mad at me for spending so much, for spending literally all my money on car parts. But I remember that $250 really hurt back then because I was working at Albertsons pushing carts, making $7.25 an hour, and $250 was a lot of money for me back then. So I started to modify my car, right? And I started looking around for like I'd always seen car shows. I'm like, there can't just be car shows for classic cars, right? Like, where are the people meet up that like modify these kinds of cars? I'd seen videos on YouTube of car meets. Obviously, Fast and Furious, you see the kind of crazy car meets they have. Obviously, there's not actual car meets like those, at least not where I live. But I wanted to see if there was like car shows around where I could meet up with people that were more related to like my interests and that were more kind of had more things in common with the things that I was trying to do with my cars that were like kind of newer, like late model cars instead of kind of the classic cars, just guys that were kind of more approachable than the older guys were at these classic car shows. So I started to look around. Obviously, at that time, Facebook groups weren't huge like they are now, but there were forums around, right? So I started doing some Googling about car meets near me, and I think I found on a forum a flyer for a car meet that was at the top of a parking garage near a shopping mall that was really close to my house, just north of my house. And so I started to look into it. I remember seeing this picture of a Mitsubishi Lancer on the flyer. It was a white Lancer. And it was on this forum, and it was like, we have these car meets every Sunday night, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Come check them out. Small community, still growing. And most of it was just kind of word of mouth. So I hit up my boys Casey and Cameron to see if they were down to go. And this was kind of the first time we went to the car meet that is known as Texas Imports Today, or TIT, or TIT for short, kind of a little funny acronym there. But that was kind of the first true car meet that I had been to, and it's probably the most influential car meet that was ever like a part of my life. It was a weekly car meet every Sunday night. It was free, top of a parking garage in a really nice area, so really safe kind of area, and a really cool place to just go meet up with people that shared common interests, and people that were more approachable, and people that were kind of more close to me in age, and stuff that I could relate to more. The cars were more of my speed, I guess, if you will, and not just a bunch of classic cars. So as I mentioned, I hit up Casey and Cameron. We went to that parking garage. We were driving up Sunday night. I remember pulling up to the first meet, and we got to the bottom of the parking garage, and we started to go up, and there wasn't really any signs of anybody here. I was like, what's going on? Like, we're going to get to the top, and there's just not going to be anybody here. But I remember going up, like we got to the second level, and I started to hear exhaust of like another car driving up to the top of the parking garage, and it sounded like an import, and I was like, oh snap, like this might actually be like legit. So we got to the top of the parking garage. I remember that was like my first time I had ever laid eyes on like a legit car meet, right? Like there was about 25 cars there at that time. The top of the parking garage was only about half full, and I did actually see that Lancer that I had saw on the flyer, and come to find out, the guy who owned that Lancer was actually the guy that kind of founded this meet and started that group and posted on that forum, and his name was Chaz. He later sold a Lancer and he got an S2000, but he's kind of the one that started Texas Imports Today. And the page actually still is around like now. If you look it up on Facebook, if you're local here in the DFW area, you probably have already heard of it. So that was the first time we had really gone to the meet, and it was my first legit car meet, man. I remember at the time, like I said, Chaz had the Lancer. At that time, this was like probably before Cameron even got his S2000. This was when I had my Infiniti, and Cameron, I think, had his Explorer, and Casey had his FJ Cruiser. Not long after that, though, Cameron had bought his S2000, and Chaz actually got an S2000 as well. So they both had black S2000s, AP2s, so it was kind of cool to see them like kind of mod their cars concurrently and like see what they were pulling up with, new parts of the car meet every week. And so I don't know, it's just really cool. Like I made so many friends at that car meet as well. There's so many people at that car meet that I met that I'm still friends with to this day, and that I've actually done business with. Like Khalid is one of my friends, or Khalid. He owns a body shop, and I've actually had him do some paint work on the Cadillac CTS-V, as I've kind of mentioned in other videos about that car. But like this is where like I met people. Like I probably have like 50 or 60 people that I'm still friends with that I met from that car meet way long ago that I've been friends with ever since. And it's always cool to see those guys at car shows nowadays, just because I feel like you've really grown up with these guys just through meeting them from the car meet. So like at that time, the only like friends I really had were just through like school or work. And so like the car meet was like kind of another set of friends that I had that I would see weekly on Sunday nights and just kind of talk to about their cars or modifications or things I wanted to do with my car, things that they were doing with their car, recommendations they had. Like this was kind of like my go-to place for knowledge and for recommendations and advice when it came to modifying cars, right? And so I remember this is also like my first time I had ever like seen like really nice cars. Like at that time, like we're talking like Porsche and like Nissan GTRs, because this was back in 2012. So like the R35 GTR had only been out for 3 years at that time. And so like there was like two that would always pull up, and that was like the only time I really got to like get up close and personal to a GTR, because they like weren't around everywhere like they are now. But like I remember seeing a GTR and I'm like, dude, like I'm gonna get this car one day. Like that was like when the GTR became my dream car. And funny enough, like when I got the Cadillac CTS-V, I was so close to like almost buying a GTR because it was kind of in the same price range, but I ended up getting the CTS-V instead. But that's like kind of where my love came for the high horsepower and stuff, because I'd met a buddy, Amir, also at these meets, who I'm also friends with to this day. And he had an R35 that was like kind of the first heavily modified R35 kind of in the area. I remember he had it built by T1, like back when T1 just had started building GTRs. T1 Racing Development, you guys may have heard them. They're real big in the GTR racing scene. I think they actually hold the current quarter mile world record for the GTR. But anyways, like he had them build it, and it was like 900 wheel horsepower. And I remember asking him for a ride one day, and like he was like, yeah, dude, for sure. And I was like, really? Like you're gonna take me for a ride? Like at that time, like I'd only talked to him a few times, so like I barely knew him, but like he took me for a ride in his GTR, and it was like the craziest experience ever. It was the fastest car I'd ever been in at the time. And I remember we actually spun all 4 tires on that GTR. And he's like, dude, we just spun all 4. And I was like, holy crap. It was like the craziest thing that I had ever experienced. And then also there's another guy named Matt who also had a blue GTR. His was beautiful, perfect spec. It was like the one I would have got if I could get one. But he actually let me drive his GTR. Like I got cool enough with him to where he trusted me to actually let me drive his GTR. And that was like the first time I'd ever drove anything with like over like 400 horsepower. So like that to me was just insane. So a lot of these lifelong friends, and like there were super chill meets, younger crowd. The people were more approachable, unlike car shows I was like typically accustomed to. People were like, they weren't like all just like a bunch of rich old guys. So like everyone was kind of like, had like a common struggle back then. Like we could only afford like car parts that were like a few $100s. Like no one really like was kind of like out in front of the other people with like a crazy like a budget or whatever. Like everyone kind of had like the same common goals and like common preferences and modifications. And so it was always cool to like pull up every Sunday night and just see like what everyone had like added to their car, or like any new cars that would pull up. I remember like that, like I was very shy at first when we went. Like we would just like Casey, Cameron, and I would just kind of like walk around the parking lot, like head down, like look at the cars, be like, oh, that's cool. Like kind of talks amongst us three, like talk amongst ourselves, and then we would just kind of leave without talking to anybody. But eventually we did get to the point where like we started actually to talk to people, and like we got cool with a lot of the people. And this is also like around the time where I was getting real big into photography, like Casey and I. And so like my love for taking pictures of cars was kind of another way for me to get to know people, because like I'd snap pictures of their car, I'd upload them to like the Facebook group page after the day after the meet, and like they'd comment on like, oh hey, thanks for taking a picture of my car, like I saw you taking a picture, like next time come say hi to me. And that was like kind of an icebreaker for me to like meet people and talk to people. And so I remember there's also 2 photographers that went to those meets, Ben and Ray, and they were kind of like the official like group photographers, and like they would like take pictures of almost every meet. And I remember like Mondays I would like race to like check their albums to see if they had taken any pictures of my car at the meet, and it was always really exciting to see if they had. Just because like I feel like if they photographed your car, like that kind of like got you more like respect amongst the group, and like you're more like a solidified member or whatever of the car group or the car meet or whatever. So my life just really at that time like revolved around those car meets. Like I was paycheck to paycheck to modify my car, and like every week I'd pull up, I'd like want like a new modification, whether it was small or big, to like kind of show people and to talk about. And like everyone was just kind of like working on their projects, they were doing them, and like just little by little modifying their cars. And so those, like I live for that stuff, man. And like I would think about that stuff all week. I would try to get my homework done as fast as possible on Friday and Saturday night, so that Sunday night I didn't have any homework and I could just pull up to the car meet, enjoy it, go home, go to sleep, go to school the next day. And so that's kind of how we were doing it back then, man. It was really awesome. And so like, yeah, initially we would only fill like the roof of the parking garage halfway. And like through the years, it got to the point where we were like filling a 5-story parking garage, like a parking garage you'd see at like a mall or a hospital. Like we were filling that parking garage all the way up with cars. I say we, but they were filling that parking garage up with like cars, and like it got to the point where it was like 400 or 500 cars like every weekend. It was absolutely insane. There was a live DJ that would come to the events. The DJ actually is still really good friends with Chaz, and he actually like works with him now. So like just lifelong friendships that were formed at this meet. And then like eventually the city decided that we had kind of, or they had kind of outgrown the spot in the venue, and that they shut down that meet. It definitely didn't end on bad terms. The meet was really well ran. Like they had volunteers, guys that came to the meet that were kind of original members. They also volunteered, like they had their own shirts. There was like 7 or 8 guys, and they would like police the meets, and like they would kick people out as soon as they broke a rule. They'd really like, you know, they were super chill and super approachable and super nice about stuff. But like one thing they didn't put up with was like people that like were revving or doing burnouts or like doing donuts or drifting or anything dangerous, that anything that could jeopardize a meet being shut down, they'd shut it down immediately and get those people kicked out. And that's kind of what made that meet so great, in my opinion. So, you know, there's also one-off meets that time. I remember there was a meet called Cupcake Meet. Maybe you guys have heard about this. It was kind of a more importy meet, but it was like they wouldn't happen as often, like probably one every 6 months. But those meets were huge. Like they'd have vendors out there. I remember NOS Energy would come out there, and like there was this one cupcake meet where like you had to like, man, this was like in 2013 maybe, like you had to quote Fast and Furious movies, and like if you got a quote, like they'd give you a free energy drink. Like it was kind of like a trivia thing. So I remember Cameron was sitting there. I guess he had just watched Fast and Furious, because he was just banging out quotes like crazy. Like he was just getting free NOS. It was hilarious. We were just getting all these free NOS, and like we get all hyped up on that crazy amount of sugar, and we just like run around these car meets and have a bunch of fun. And there's like also food trucks. Like that was the first time I'd seen food trucks at a car meet before. And then like really like the top tier cars came out to these meets, because normally like our car meets, like we didn't have like a bunch of crazy cars, but like Cupcake always had like super nice cars, because people would come from out of town. Like you'd see like NSXs, you'd see Skylines, you'd see GTRs, you'd see Lamborghinis, Ferraris, like stuff like that, like would kind of like, and like not just like stock cars, but like people that actually modified those cars. So like you'd see like modified like GTRs like on wheels and stuff, like not just like the stock ones you'd normally see that people were just like too afraid to modify. It's like actually that people that modify these things, and it was always cool to go to those and like take pictures of cars and like talk to people, and that was always fun. I think we went to like 3 or 4 cupcake meets. They didn't happen that often. And actually at one of them, like I almost passed out because I was fasting that day, and it was in the middle of the summer. It was like 105 degrees, and like I couldn't drink anything, because when we fast, we don't drink anything, including water. And like that day, like I almost passed out. And Casey, like I remember going to his FJ Cruiser and just cranking his AC on, just like putting my face in front of the vent and just like trying to cool off. Like that was a pretty intense day. Cars and Coffee wasn't that big at the time. I remember there was Cars and Coffee Dallas at Classic BMW. That kind of car show has been shut down since, but that was also a really dope one to go to. Kind of the things I remember about that one though, like it was way too early. I think it started at like 7 a.m., but you had to be there like 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning to actually get into like the main area and like get a decent parking spot. And that one like really brought out like the money, like the super insane nice cars of Dallas would come to that. I remember around that time it was like the big 3, like as I had previously mentioned, like the P1, the 918, LaFerrari. I think I saw all of those cars at one Cars and Coffee show one time. That was like really insane to see. The first Cars and Coffee I went to, I actually saw a P1 and 918 at the same one. And that to me was mind blowing. And like also that one like had all like the crazy nice stuff, Aventadors, V12s, V10s, like crazy stuff, crazy expensive stuff that I'd never really seen before. And so like that was like kind of my Cars and Coffee Dallas experience. And like we didn't go to that one as much just because it was like an hour away from us, and we mostly work Saturday mornings. So we really didn't have time to go to those, but like I remember on like holidays we'd go, or like if we all got off, like we'd make the drive out there, and it was like on tollways and stuff too at the time. So that was always a treat. And even then, that meet got shut down just because people leaving were just so reckless. Like they try to drift out of there, and like enough people like wrecked leaving that meet that they finally had to shut it down. And funny story about that, like towards the end there, when there was a lot of people going to those, and like they started getting real selective about who they let into the main parking area, just because they'd get more cars that could fit there, so they'd redirect everyone to like spectator lots. And I remember I pulled up, it was me and my G35, Cameron in his S2000, and Casey at that time, he had traded in his FJ and he got a BMW 335i. And I remember I was kind of the first one, and they're like, you have to go park in the spectator lot. So like they kind of turned me away. Basically like, your car is not nice enough to get in here. And so I was like, oh, and like I tucked my tail between my legs and I went and parked in the spectator lot, and it was like so demoralizing. But I parked there, and like Casey and Cameron got in, and I went and met up with them. They're like, hey, where'd you park? Like, why did you like go around? Why didn't you come in? And I told them, I was like, oh, like these meets like get so busy that like you'll get boxed in, which was true, but like there wasn't a real reason. And I was like, I just want to like have my car over there just in case like I need to leave early for any reason or whatever. I just don't want to get boxed in and sit in traffic or whatever. But like really I was butthurt that like I got turned away, and I just didn't want to admit it to them. So that was kind of my cars and coffee Dallas experience. So my puny little Infiniti G35, which it was clean, it was respectable, it was lowered on coilovers, it had Vogue Racing wheels on it, like it was decent, like it was nicer than most of the cars, and like it wasn't just resonator deleted, but I guess it wasn't nice enough to get into cars and coffee Dallas. They'd rather let in a stock Gallardo. So that was kind of my cars and coffee Dallas story. But like nowadays, like kind of fast forwarding to now, I don't really go, like, I don't feel like there's not really like true car meets anymore. I don't really go to them anymore. Like the last one I went to was crazy. Like it got shut down. Like people were revving, people were doing burnouts, people were screaming, running around the parking lot. Like this isn't a Target parking lot. And like, it just went crazy. Like there's just so many immature high schoolers there. And like, it really, it always makes you question the fact that, you know, have these car meets really just gone to shit, or am I just so old now that like all the immature stuff those kids are doing nowadays just like doesn't remotely interest me? And like if I was in fact one of those immature kids that used to do that back in the day, but like I wasn't a dude that revved or like did anything crazy or like drove fast through the parking lot or anything. Like I didn't do that. And so I don't know if that's just part of growing up, or if like social media has ruined these meets as well. Cause you know, you've got kids on Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok nowadays, like they want to like be memorable and like create viral moments. So like it kind of causes them to do more crazy stuff at car meets than like we used to do, because social media wasn't as prevalent in 2012 as it is now. So, you know, I don't know where the, you know, where the truth is, and kind of why car meets I feel like aren't as cool as they used to be. But that's just kind of what it is in my opinion. So we do often still go to Cars and Coffee South. Like I will say that one, you've seen videos of my channel. That one usually has a decent turnout. It's still way too early, 8 a.m. in the morning, whatever. I don't know why Cars and Coffee is so early. A bunch of rich dudes that one day decided like, let's have car meets on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. so that, you know, we can look at our cars and, you know, we can leave before our family gets up or whatever. But still way too early in my opinion, but that's my own opinion. That one you do have to pay to get into, which I always have mixed opinions about, because I feel like a great car meet is always free and it promotes the most attendance, but also like if you're paying to get in, like chances are it's at a nicer venue, you have better security, you can pay to have people control it better, and you can kind of keep some of those people out that probably would be troublemakers if it was a free car show, if you guys kind of know what I mean. Like it kind of keeps the riffraff out of the car shows and kind of keeps it more ruly. But like even sometimes it just feels like it's a parking lot full of stock Lamborghini Huracans and Audi R8s and Ferrari 488s and Lamborghini Gallardos. Like, you know, it's only cool so many times before like a parking lot full of like 20 Lamborghini Huracans is like cool. Like it's the same. Sometimes it's like the same cars every single time, and like once you've seen them once, like it's just like there's not like as many cool and unique cars that go there. So it's always cool for little kids to go and like check it out, because I was once one of those little kids, but like at the same time it's like, dude, like I'm tired of seeing 20 or 30 Lamborghini Huracans that like have the same exhaust on them. It's like that stuff gets old after a while. Like don't get me wrong, I'd love to have one of them, but like, you know, some of you guys will know what I'm talking about. And so the car meets I still do go to occasionally, like kind of more like on an invite basis. It's smaller, chill hangouts, all people like that know each other, people who are like around my age, like in like the late 20s to early 30s, some in their 40s, just kind of like at the same maturity level, and like just, you know, stuff that is like really like, it's just mostly it's more catching up with friends and maybe getting dinner more than it is a car meet. But like, you know, everyone's got cool cars and we still check them out. So that's kind of that's kind of more towards more like what I would like to, or what I go to nowadays. So, you know, car meets in 2022, it's like, it seems like nowadays it's just a bunch of high schoolers, man. Like most of these car meets get shut down before they even get started. Like within less than an hour, they're like already shut down. Like people revving the crap out of their muffler deleted cars, attempting to do burnouts, trying to drift, doing flybys or pulls as they're leaving. And then like, the cops show up. It's never a good thing when the cops show up and they shut it down, and then they try to relocate and it turns into a whole mess, a whole big ordeal. And like that can only happen so many times at car meets before you just like give up and stop going, because it inevitably happens at like almost every car meet. So I don't know, like I feel like they're personally ruined at this point. Like there's not really a good one, at least not one around me. One thing I did want to mention about takeovers, if you will, like these takeovers are absolutely insane. Like if you guys participate in these things, like, oh my God, they're so stupid. You know, I've seen videos of people shutting down highways, like legit highways in the middle of the day, backing traffic up and just like doing donuts and like Dodge Chargers. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And then like people get hit by cars, like they're standing outside watching, trying to film, and like they'll get hit by the tail of a car that's swinging around. That's like instant karma. And then like just all the people around them encouraging the behavior, like 20 people on their phones, like trying to record. And like the people that go to takeovers are just truly ruining it for everyone else, because most people don't understand the difference between like a takeover and a car meet, or like doing donuts in an intersection versus like racing. Like they think it's all racing, and like the news thinks it's all the same thing. And so like those people that participate in those actions like kind of ruin it for everyone else. And so like you're kind of putting all public car events in jeopardy when you do that. So I hate those. I don't really know anyone that actually enjoys going to those, but there are so many people that do, and just those things are just not good for anybody, dude. So if you go to takeovers, man, just, I don't know, man. It's stupid. It's stupid. Straight up. There's no other way to put it. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the do's and don'ts of car meets, right? So some of the do's. Do respect the rules in the venue. Guys, if someone has a nice car meet, they've got rules. You got to respect the rules if you want to stick around, and respect the venue that they're holding it at. Most car meets are in public places that are free access anyways, but it's always good to respect it, because if you cause any issues there, then the business owners that kind of have businesses around that will look for you next time. They'll kick you out. They'll call the police, whatever. So you always want to respect the rules and the location. This one, talk to people at car meets, right? Like I know a lot of people, and sometimes I'm guilty of this too. They go to car meets, they walk around awkwardly, and they leave without saying anything to anybody. It's like, that's no fun, man. Like you gotta go up to people, talk to people, see if you can make some friends. If people ask you questions about your car, answer their questions. It's always much more enjoyable if you try to get to know people and talk to people when you're at car meets, versus just like walking around awkwardly and then just leaving. And so another one, do volunteer to help if you really like the meet. Like again, like if you really like this meet, you want to stick around, you're like, hey man, like what can I do to like get involved, to like help this meet out? Like I'm sure meets are always looking for volunteers to help run them, to help direct traffic, to help, you know, to enforce the rules or whatever, what have you. A lot of these car meets, when they start out, you know, they don't have budget to be paying people. So like if you like the meet, like volunteer to help, man. Make it a better meet for everybody. Drive respectfully, whether that's coming in, leaving, or just driving around the parking lot of the meet. Like don't speed through the parking lot. There's a lot of people standing around, a lot of people walking around. You definitely don't want to end up in a situation like that. And then like if a car meet is like at a local business, I was thinking about this. Like we used to go to a car meet that was at a restaurant called Beef O'Brady's, and it's definitely not there anymore. But like, you know, go check the business out. Maybe give them some business. Maybe at the very least, like get a drink or get like an appetizer, or like if it's at like a restaurant or like if it's at a store, like go inside, check out the store, maybe buy something, like, because those people are like helping out the car meet by hosting them. And so if you can give them like a little bit of business or just kind of show some interest, it'll kind of encourage them to continue to host that kind of stuff. So that's always a good thing to do. And then the don'ts. Obviously, let's go over the don'ts. Don't rev the crap out of your engine. Nobody likes that guy. Don't be the guy that's just constantly sitting on red line, revving the crap out of your car, because trust me, it's not cool. Don't race coming into or leaving the venue. Don't like do pulls past the venue or whatever, because if you're doing that, even if like the meet organizer doesn't say anything to you, like if the cops get called because people hear somebody racing or they see somebody racing and that person is long gone, like they'll come to the meet and they'll shut the meet down just because that person came from the meet or was at the meet for 2 seconds or whatever. Like, don't be the guy that does a pull past the meet, ends up getting it shut down, because when you're gone, they're going to go to the location where that happened at, and they're going to see a meet going on. They're going to be like, obviously it was you guys can't do this anymore, and they shut it down. Don't do burnouts or donuts. I feel like that one's obvious, but I've still seen people to this day try to do some crazy stuff. It's just very dangerous. Parking lot full of people. Don't do anything stupid. Don't leave trash behind. Again, just mention this one, guys. Respect the location. Don't leave your trash in the parking lot, even if it's like a public parking lot, because if you leave trash there, whoever eventually ends up cleaning that parking lot, they're going to find out who did it, and they're going to shut it down, and it's going to ruin it for everybody. And then don't fight people. This one is pretty obvious, but like I've seen fights happen at car meets, whether or not that's like over, stuff that gets talked about online. People see each other at car meets, they start fighting. It's like, dude, like keep it civil. Don't get into fights at car meets. Don't ruin it for the everybody, because once a good car meet is started and gets established, it can get shut down so easily just because of the amount of people that come and because of the variables that you have when you're running that car meet. So if you want a nice meet to stay around, guys, follow those kind of basic do's and don'ts. And you'll really enjoy your experience, and the longevity of the car meet will stay, and it'll grow. It'll be something more people want to come to, as long as it stays civil. So anyways, I just wanted to hop on here, episode 3. I wanted to talk about the state of car meets and if they've really been ruined. Again, I don't know if it's because I'm just a lot older now and I just see a bunch of immature kids, or whether it's the social media, people trying to do things for clout, if you will, clout chasing, and just leads them to do more crazy, stupid stuff. Or if it is just, in fact, car meets have been ruined. So I want to get on here, kind of tell you guys about my car stories, and talk about one of the biggest meets that kind of played an influence in my life. Met so many people through it, and definitely, like, I feel like there could still be great car meets, but people have just kind of gotten a little bit crazy. And I feel like if we go back to these basics, there can still be great car meets. So anyways, it's been your boy Jamal. As a reminder, please send in your comments. Please send in your questions via voice, via video, via email. Be sure to include your name, where you're from, if you do, and I'll feature those on the podcast, similar to the way I did at the beginning of this episode. And also, please comment on this episode down below. Hit the like button. It really helps the growth of the channel and to spread the kind of video and to share it. And also subscribe to the channel for future episodes. I've got some more regular car videos coming up. I've got some parts in the mail for the Corvette, some ideas for the Corvette, and I also got some stuff for the Cadillac. Now that the warranty's up, I might start modifying that a little bit more. So anyways, subscribe to stay tuned and up to date on that content. Anyways, it's been your boy Jamal. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. It's late. I'll see you guys next one. Peace.